Attorney McDonald, and of course the issue is racism, diversity, and tolerance. And I think, Attorney McDonald, we promised that we would allow you to continue this discussion of superiority, inferiority, and I think it's a subject that is certainly worthy of a discussion, because we find so many people today without any real idea exactly where that places them in reference to their thoughts and their beliefs in reference to these concepts.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Right before we went on break, we were talking about what happened with, again, over 6 million Jews during World War II. What we also, I think, need to make reference to is what Americans did during World War II, the Japanese internment camps that existed and had so many Japanese Americans that were basically stripped of their businesses, homes were taken away from them, and they were basically put into what you might call a domestic concentration camp to some degree. So when we talked about what happened in Germany, it would be so unfair to single them out as if they had a monopoly, so to speak, on this ideal of superiority, because they don't.
It's a human
It is
problem.
a human. It is again a part of the human condition, and you see it not just related to groups that are different in terms of race. You see it in terms of religion. You see it in terms of economic status. You also see it occurring within races. One of the things I find fascinating is, for example, this whole idea that during the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were schools that were established for blacks and had something that was called the brown paper bag test. And the idea that if you were darker than that brown paper bag, you're not admitted to those schools. Well, that is a issue related to tolerance. And it is a type of racism, again, that exists within a race. Within a race. And so when we talk about tolerance, it clearly goes beyond the traditional types that we tend to think about. I think what's important, again, is that we start to recognize that it is a problem and have dialogue like this that will permit the issue to be brought to the forefront. It's one of those things that's almost like taboo. You talk about it behind closed doors, but the reality is that it exists out in the public today. How do you teach your young people, your children, respond to someone who has a disability, and recognizing that if someone is disabled, that doesn't mean that they don't lack the capacity, ability to do other things. The whole labeling that we put on people with disabilities, for example, at one point they were called handicapped. Well, you and I both know that that term relates back to the 1700s, when someone who was poor would stand in the courtyard square with their cap in their hand asking for money. And so for us to use that type of labeling to address or to identify someone because of some birth defect or mental defect is dangerous. And that's the type of labeling that if it's not addressed properly, those young people will carry on through high school and their adult lives. And so
it will have a tremendous impact upon them personally, upon their lives personally.
Yes, it will. And so it's teaching tolerance at the pre-K, or I should say K through 12 grade period is critical. I wish I had been exposed to those types of opportunities. I was fortunate in a lot of ways because having grown up in Buffalo, grew up in public housing that was quite diverse. Some of my closest friends were Italian Americans and Puerto Ricans, and some of them were Native Americans, and those experiences really carried over for me through in my adult life. Not everyone has those experiences, but those being exposed to different cultures at a very young age helped me understand that not everyone is like me.
And it gave you a different view of the world too, I would imagine.
Yes, it did. I mean, what's strange is that, yes, we were all living in public housing, but but the reality is that we all have our differences, and to have a great appreciation for different groups, their languages, respecting their cultures, respecting their ideologies. Again, that's what tolerance is about. We don't have to accept it as our own, but we do have to respect it as being part of someone's rights as a human being to be different.
And so you've indicated, you've talked about religious intolerance, and you talked about economic intolerance, and in other words, as you indicated earlier, it's simply a human condition, and
Yes.
the only way that we can deal with it is recognize it. Now, as a minister, what would you suggest in terms of your ministerial experiences that we could do in order to deal with this as an issue? You see, so which is to say that we've got a problem of racism in this country, we've got a problem of folks not willing to recognize diversity, and we've got a problem of other problems that we've talked about, tolerance and intolerance. Now, what would you suggest that we might be able to do to bring about a greater understanding of all of these things?
Well, I think
to a wider public, for example.
Sure. Well, I think the clergy clearly have an affirmative responsibility to take the lead in this area. It's said that you can't legislate morals. Dr. King advocated that and made it very clear you can't do that, but you do have to, from a theological point of view, be able to send a message that we're all God's children, and we may have different religious beliefs. One may believe in the Quran, one may believe in the Torah, one may believe in the Holy Bible, one may have some completely different understanding about what the Supreme Being is. And there may be someone who is an atheist who doesn't believe in the Supreme Being at all. The whole idea that there has to be room for even those discussions, because we're all created in God's image.
In other words, regardless of whether you're an atheist, whether you, whatever, you still have to recognize that you are a created being and that God is the creator. Is that, would
Yes,
that be the
that would
essence
be,
of
right,
of
and again,
trying,
right, and again, that's my belief that just as a minister and as a child of God, and I would, again, tolerance says that I have to be prepared to accept someone else's opinion about that. Someone may see it completely different. And tolerance says there has to be room for those differences.
But there is no room for the fact that all of us are created beings, and that God is that there is a creator in terms of dealing with this intolerance and intolerance.
Right. Well, let me, I guess, maybe state it in a different way. Regardless if you believe in there being a higher order or not, we're here on this planet. This is the only place that we've seen that scientists have been able to tell us that is able of sustaining life in this universe, and therefore we've got to figure out a way to live together. Dr. King put it best. He said we got to live together as brothers and sisters, or we're going to die together as fools. And he was right.
Well, now, on the last couple of minutes here, we have Attorney McDonald. On the eve of the 21st century, what would you say to our audience this morning in reference to these three issues, racism, diversity, and tolerance? I mean, what would you say in terms of their responsibility in terms of trying to bring these ideas or concepts into their own lives?
Well, my first suggestion, and again recommendation, is that we expose ourselves to different opportunities where we can have a greater appreciation for tolerance. Instead of going to your church on this particular Sunday, take in a different worship experience. Maybe go to church with someone who's Islamic, or I should say really to the temple or whatever on their day of worship, or have an opportunity to go to some of the different festivals, for example, that we have in the Middle Tennessee area, the Greek festivals, Italian festivals. Those are all experiences that will permit you to see the world in a different way and not have to really drive very far to do it. The other thing that I think is important is that we, again, start planting seeds, these seeds of tolerance with our young people. They have to be able to sustain this ideology. You and I, we've had a chance to live our lives for the most part, but the young people have to understand that this is what they're going to have to be able to do 20, 30 years from now. The world has changed, and the world that I knew as a child completely different from the world that young people know today. And the world is becoming more diverse. According to some of the studies that have been done, people of color are going to make up the majority 25, 30 years from now. And so clearly it's critical for us to be able to understand differences.
Very good. And of course, Attorney McDonald, let me thank you for giving us that excellent information about racism, diversity, and tolerance. And I'm sure that our audience will be encouraged by some of the things and to recognize that it's something that we individually can do. I mean, you don't have to wait on a committee or any whatever to make such a decision. And of course, let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.